The first idea for this session was to call it DATEX II Club 2. But yeah, clubbing in this setting is not the easiest thing to do. Nevertheless, what we want to do the next 1.5 hours is present you some pitches about things that pop up. We have a fixed roadmap in terms of standardization for the coming years, but we also need to think about the somewhat further future already. And what we want to do is we give you some pitches of the most eloquent people that we could find. And they will give you some of their thoughts, they will introduce you. And then after that, we want to have a discussion with you, with thoughts, views, things that come up, that you say, well, it would be very useful if blah, blah, blah. Or did you think of blah, blah, blah. And why do we want that? We've learned these days that DATEX II is a very rich and powerful tool, but it is sometimes very hard to make the choices how to use it in terms of specific services that we have in mind. And we need to discuss on that, to know what kind of services we think of, to know what kind of requirements that brings, and how we can adapt to that, if we want to. If it is, and if we want to, is a joint we. It is not us or me or the technical board of DATEX II or the change management board. It is the community as a whole that is offered a tool that supports the requirement of the community. And of course, standardization brings some pain of adapting to the common denominator of what a standard is. But hey, that's life. We just go through as the presenters are here, and once you've done your pitch, you take a seat or you come back there and afterwards. And the first one I see here is Ian's.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So I was originally asked to... is this?
You switched it off.
Switched it off. Okay, that's not the right button. The guest wrong.
It can be anything.
Okay, so I was originally asked to speak about Exchange APIs, and that we changed that to include this high-level roadmap for standardization, but I will include a little bit on Exchange APIs as well. That information, I think you already saw yesterday. Those are the specifications and standards that exist. I don't need to itemize them. You see there are many content standards, and there are also Exchange standards. I'm going to press a button now and see if it's the right one, because the last time it was the wrong one. Yeah, okay. I'd like to ask you all to think, as I go through in the next 2 minutes, as I show a couple of things, if there's anything that is a surprise to you, or anything you don't like, or anything you see missing, please take a note of that. You might get a chance to share that in the session, or if not, then with any time with me afterwards. I'd be interested if I've missed anything, or surprises, things you don't like. But anyway, here's a different viewpoint on what specifications we have today, showing the separation of concerns, content and exchange specifications, and also technology independent at the top and technology specific at the bottom. And you see it's not quite symmetrical. On the content side, we have UML models, we have XML schema mapping. We have a JSON schema mapping. I've shown that in a different color because it has a different status. It is, unlike the others, it is not formally, it's not in a standard. We don't have a standardized definition of that yet. So that's something in the roadmap. And on the Exchange side, it's even, yeah, there's less symmetry there too. We have standardized specifications covering the use of SOAP, WSDL, XML to exchange data. When it comes to other technologies, for example, supporting the JSON that we can produce today and the tools supports, we only have examples about how to use OpenAPI. We have an OpenAPI definition for a very specific service called DATEX II Lite. And we have a descriptive document saying, yeah, here's how you could use OpenAPI, but we don't have a clear OpenAPI specification. So again, that's something that we feel we should have on the roadmap, an OpenAPI specification which has a similar status to the SOAP ones. Yeah, so just putting that into some pictures, we would plan to standardize the JSON schema mapping, have formal OpenAPI definitions. In the Exchange space, we also are working on supporting new API features. Maybe some others will talk a little bit more about that. But things like querying and filtering, small updates and notifications, those are things we plan on supporting and leading to potentially platform-specific protocols for the use of message brokers. This is my last slide, showing you then on just on a timeline of standards that some of these are agreed work that entailed. A couple of these are my assumptions, just looking at surely we will have to do this at this time. So you heard, I think, yesterday we would have DATEX II release 3.4 as a Christmas present, the way it was described. Then these formal standards tend to lag the releases that we make by a few months because we reach technical stability, but the formal standardizer process then has to go and finalize the publication. So that means in 2023, we would have corresponding revisions of traffic regulations and device status and faults, technical specifications. In 2023, we would make release 3.5, which would include updated traffic management plans and hands-free routing. I think we would also, that's the, well, but the specifications for those are more likely to be 2024. And also think that's the timing for the JSON standard. Then at the end of NAP Core, the thinking is we would be releasing then DATEX II release 4.0, late 2024, along with the updated methodology, specification, and the first set of new version 4 based SEN documents, the ENs, would be 2025. And if you're thinking, version 4, I'm still in version 2, but that will be 7 years since, it was 2018 when version 3 was published, and 2018 when those ENs were published. So 7 years is maybe not moving too fast. So anyway, I've used my time. I'll stop.
Thank you, Ian. As always, very complete, eh? And some burning questions maybe already now. None? That's remarkable. The next slide it's always is also a surprise for me. It's you probably.
Probably. It's Jan. Normally it's Jan.
It's Jan. And Jan will only have.
Just wait for my.
Yeah. Let's wait for Jan.
No.
Yeah.
It has to be done through special magic.
Oh. The floor is yours.
So, oops, like this. Thanks, Jan, to introduction to my part. It should come now. Okay, yeah. So, this. Okay, and as you can see, I'm really happy that Jan started.
Jan, can you speak
Yeah.
into the mic?
That Jan started with the same view to our DATEX area. So if you look at it, so on the left column, there are things related to content model and serialization. On the right side, there are things related to exchanging and exchange protocols. And you know that I'm talking a lot about linked open data, but it's at the bottom because it should serve us. It should not be the center of our activity. It should be something that, if handy, should serve us. If not, we should not make things too complex. And I put these things to the platform independent part level, more abstract one, and to the more specific ones. On the content model, things which I found could be handy to us, taken from linked open data approach, is currently we are thinking when delivering the content in a payload publication, and you see the truck of the records running to your place, throwing it away. And we should probably start thinking in delivering it in small messages, small pieces. This should be one small difference. Then we could think about maintaining identity of these pieces. So we have an identity of the publication, identity of a predefined location set, identity of situation record, and we could, learning from the linked open data, make those IDs really usable using URL or IRI. We could start be linking to other data sets, data sources within DATEX, because you saw so many publications of different type. If you want in our data express link to some another piece in another type of publication, with linked open data approach, it's quite natural part of expressing the content. And when we come to the platform specific stuff, using RDF in whatever kind of serialization would be alternative form of delivering the content. This would require ontology which is able to express the content we already have in our model. So this is one thing which we could think of. And the other one is when we are thinking of an identity of something, we could think of IRI or URL or URI, which is representing that thing. It could make it easy to say, I want to comment on that version of situation record, and you provide an ID which is the referenceable, and you can really point to the exact point or version. This is about the content model, and the other part is about exchange protocols. On the abstract level, the platform independent one, we could start thinking that we are not delivering tracks of data, we are delivering streams of events. And this goes naturally to messaging and this stuff. And in practically all the publications, we are doing that. That stream could be fast or could be slower. We used to call the slower static one, but it's moving anyway. The dynamic one is faster one. So this is one part. And the other one is we should get used to fast delivery of small pieces. With safety-related traffic information, an update period of 1 or 2 minutes could come to 10 seconds or 5 seconds because, yeah, we should inform drivers quickly. So this is on the abstract level. And on the specific level, with using linked open data technologies, HTTP GET could be the way to consume the data in most cases. And we could replace the push protocol by server-sent events. There is an option to consume the data using HTTP GET, which is server-sent event protocol, which will deliver you the new content as soon as it appears on the server using one long-living connection with ability to reconnect. This is not exactly linked open data technology, but it's used over there too. And we use it in production in Czechia. I heard from Jonas that they use it probably too. Then there is a term called dereferenceable, that something identity is dereferenceable. It means it's URL where you can get the content. This is something what could really happen a lot. Imagine you have in your XML document reference to XML schema, which you can really download and use and learn to digest the content and understand what is in there. This is very small change, which could make the things much simpler. Then a technology called linked data event stream is something I was presenting yesterday, which allows to deliver current content, but also historical one in a very efficient way using cacheable content. And server-side event I was already talking about. And now coming to linked open data stuff, we would have to think about continuing with DATEX vocabulary or ontology, whichever school we choose, because without that we cannot serialize the content into RDF. Then linked data event stream is something from what I expect really a lot, because we could have one URL from where you can follow your nose to get all historical data or the current one, and it could be automatically done by a client which is coded and able to deliver the content. Again, the client could at the end serve stream of events like messaging for processing inside of your system. And server-side events I have already mentioned. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. That's a whole new set of paradigms to consider. Huh? That's tempting and challenging. The next one, well, just open one. It's the message broker technologies from, it's not sharp. I cannot read it. It's Paul.
I put up all three of us, but only one can speak, of course, so I'll do it. This is a kind of new topic as well for me. We are using message queues inside some of the solutions we have developed, but not to the extent that this might develop into. So I'm just going to pitch.
You can look on the screen.
Yes, I can look on the screen. Okay. Well, that's showing another one now. So this one is showing what I want to.
Click again. It's frozen.
Yeah, it's frozen there. Can you? I'll go back. Okay. Yep. Doesn't look very good now. Oh yeah. Try again. I think it's not broken now. We'll see. Yes, I'm waiting. Ah, there we go. Yeah. So I'll dive directly into this one. This is the current situation. Everyone probably knows this. We have some publications based on profiles, and we use the SOAP protocol for exchange. And we have consumers that consumes payloads and make them into other services. A lot of examples for service providers that use the data in their traveling information services. Nothing new about that. This is, of course, our current situation. There are some road operators, media, service providers. And the next phase, I'll just skip that one, is I've chosen to actually just briefly say what Nordic Way 3, harmonized with C roads, and also a proposed pilot in VG2 in NAPCore are doing. So still, there is a DATEX node in this example, this scenario, which has a publication which is possible to filter. So it's a REST interface on this node as well that you can actually apply filters on, and you get payloads with the applied filters. And then there is an AMQP client that actually breaks the situation payload from this side down to individual situation documents. And these documents are distributed on a broker that you can subscribe on. And there is also some filtering options here that you can subscribe only on situations with filters that you would really like to receive. The whole idea here is, of course, to create some kind of vast network of all of these broker interchanges, and then you can apply some federation principles on this. Then they actually know about each other. That probably breaks the whole NAP idea also, but this is kind of a future scenario that this is the way you could go with brokers. So I just added some topics that are for the discussion. Which queue technology? There are a lot, actually. The most famous ones are AMQP, MQTT, and Kafka, maybe. There are also products like RabbitMQ that apply an AMQP version lower because they, in the product, has solved what the AMQP 1.0 does. That's also possible to use such products. A data space is needed. It has to be managed. Federation principles, they have to know, I think they have to know about each other if this should be a success. Security, I would say it's essential here as well. You need to protect this in some way, at least when we come to traffic regulations and things that are bound by law. You need this to be authentic. You have to know about the authenticity. And some requirements, filtering, querying. Maybe the API is the right way forward for us. So the API could be the source for a broker network. And there I will stop, I think. Yeah. Thank you. There was this one as well, but we can do that after. Okay?
Yeah.
I'll sit here.
You'll sit, take your seat, please. Oh, now it's my turn. No, it's Joseph's turn. Also good. No, that's fine.
All right, fantastic. It's an inspiring morning, I must say. It's a very interesting date until now. And I'm very happy because my job's already done. The guys have put everything already on their slides. Yeah. So what I was supposed to give a pitch about is the ideas that we have for version 4. Version 4, as Ian has showed, has to be available during next year in order to be in line, available for refactoring the existing data models. And then if you think backwards on the systematic review deadlines, we have something like 9 months maximum left. And now the idea is, have all been presented, I must say. It's very interesting. So what is the problem with the methodology? The problem is that 20 years ago, we thought, hey, we have to do better than DATEX, yeah? We have to do a little bit more with a structured approach that allows us to sustain in the future. One thing is, 20 years later, we are still sitting here, so we succeeded. Yeah. There were a lot of standards generated at the same time, which nobody knows the names of anymore. But on the other hand, there were elements in the methodology that reflected the world that has designed it. Yeah? Think about it. The ITS directive and the concept of national access points was about 10 years down the line, yeah, when we did that. So we were thinking in terms of center-to-center interfaces, and we were thinking in terms of electronic publications. So one center would, one server, if you want, would have a whole set of objects, encode it somehow, give it to the very IT powerful recipient who would then have the complete view on one set of objects, and then he would have the power to sort out what elements are relevant for me, what is not relevant for me, what is maybe geographically out of scope for me. That was all, let's say, put on the table of the client to do so. Yeah, and now, as you heard from those guys, we have to face new technologies that have come up. We have to think about other interfaces to support other interfaces. And if you dive deep, then you have into the models we have nowadays, then you find inside the models, in the packages, you really find a dynamic road traffic data ontology. So that has always been our approach in the models, not to have specific objects for one application or one use case, but to describe the objects in the transport world. But around it, you have a monolithic publication structure. And that goes down to the way we use associations, UML associations in the model. We only have one type of UML associations, which is depicted as a composition. You know what that means? A composition means the elements only exist in the aggregate. Yeah? So I've created, in the discussion we had on the techie side, I've created a little example about a university. Then you would have a course, and the course would have students, which means if the course is over, the students die. And that is not our expectation of students. Yeah? So we need something else. If we want to support the API ideas that the guys have shown, we need a different way of modeling that. A student is an entity, a course is an entity, a university is an entity. They have relationships to each other, but different APIs might want to go into the model at different entry points, and they might want to need different types of an aspect of the overall model. And that is something you can't do now. What we do now is we have the model root, that is the entry into the world, the single entry. If you look, then we have per publication only one model root. And from there, the serialization, how to go through the model, down to the minimum attribute is actually pre-described and predefined. This is why nobody of you ever got a description of how the model is traversed. It's implicit. There is only one way to do it. If you want to serve message queues, if you want to serve querying APIs, yeah, which, I mean, it's fine if we open up for JSON and Open API, but if we create an Open API to get the publication, then we are not serving the expectation of the users. It is fine if we go for AMQP, but you showed it clearly. If we send the publication via AMQP, that doesn't make any sense at all. So we have to go into this. We have to support this granularity. We have to allow fragments of the model being served from one API, other fragments with another entry class being served via another API, which means we need to do more in terms of defining entry points, and in terms of defining traversal strategies to create API-specific outputs of one model. And that is, we had a lot of ideas, we discussed a lot of ideas during the last month. I was quite happy with the result, I must say. Some things are going out, but it will be challenging to come to an end by June. That's the point, yeah? So I would say, yeah, we will have to look into that. And obviously what has come on the table recently is the concept of linked open data and how they deal with granularity of information. So, okay, that adds to the challenge, put it that way. Yeah? There are a few smaller elements that we also looked at. Now, one thing is what we found a little bit awkward is if you guys look at the UML diagram of a DATEX model, what you see is mathematically a graph. Yeah, most people with a technical education would immediately say it's a graph. Yeah, it's edges and nodes. Yeah? It's classes and associations, or lines. Yeah, you will actually say, there are two types of lines. Yeah? So actually, you see two graphs. You see a composition graph and you see an inheritance graph or specialization graph. The thing is, we actually have three graphs. There is the number 3, the hidden graph, I called it, yeah, which is the referencing graph. We have referencing mechanisms, but we do not depict them as associations. We hide them in meta attributes, yeah. And that is kind of something where we say, okay, good, that would be more clearly visible, and maybe we can even make use of that in this new design in a better way if we make that an association as well. So that is kind of one thing that would make diagrams clearer. And I think we need clearer diagrams for this higher complexity of the new version 4 world. Yeah. The second thing is we've seen tons of UML diagrams in presentations during these 2 days, and all people are totally impressed by the huge number of classes, and and every presenter says, I'm sorry, you can't read that. Why are there so many classes? Well, actually what we do, this is something which we found out in the last 20 years, is we try to limit ourselves to as few UML profile concepts as possible. And what we did actually is we used the D2 class stereotype for a couple of different concepts. Yeah? We use it for entities in the domain and their relationship, but we also use it for complex or compound data types. Actually, that doesn't make sense, and we are the only standard that does it that way. And it would be better if we had these complex compound data types also just as a type. We have the D2 data type. We could have it as a D2 complex data type, or however we do it. Then they would all of a sudden disappear from the structural diagrams, which would make their expressive power much stronger. Yeah? So these are the things that we are thinking about at the moment. And as you can see, that they all reflect the requirements from the other presentations. And it's going to be a challenge, but we want to deliver by June, but we need input.
Thank you. Joseph, the input, yeah. Many thoughts about things, eh? That's, and now we have to make one message, or we have to abstract one reality from it, to serve several realities, because everybody has a different use case in his head when we talk about this kind of developments, and we will bring that together. There's one more, I think. Yeah, there are 2 more. This one we already had. No, the other one. I would like to have this one as the last one. What was the name of your message queue? Yeah, the Fabrici. No, one lower. That's not the one. One below that one. No. No. The one in the middle with Fabrizio's name in it. No. That one. No? This one. Yes. Fabrizio.
I think we have an overlap with Paul, but I do a different point of view. And this is about message queue brokers, but yeah, we could have plug and play tools to exchange DATEX2 payload, but let's see which are the features to be implemented. And so I start with the exchange vision. What is the data exchange ecosystem? And we have a traffic management center where we originate the information, where information is created from traffic monitoring, information from the road operators, and so on. And we exchange these to NAP, Traffic Information Center, who deliver information to the worldwide, and service provider who have client customers who takes the services from them with the information that are provided by the traffic management center from the road. So road and traffic management is the focus for the traffic management center. Then information delivery services, the focus of the traffic information center and service providers. And there should be some information flows. They could go from the NAP. NAP is also to be defined, which are the function of the NAP, and we have dealt this with this in these days. But also NAP can be a repository when I can achieve the direct links from information flow from the traffic management center. Then there is a traffic management center. We are not only one management center in the world. We have many roads, many competencies, many operators. And so traffic management center are entitled to exchange data among them. And this is one of the first use cases of DATEX2 was Strada project among France and Germany, how to exchange data to the cross-border information to grant that the people from France to Germany and Germany to France, they were corrected, informed about what was behind the borders. And they can also manage the network in a way that it could be improved to grant the road network efficiency, and so the level of service for the overall road network. So this is one of the use cases that we have in mind as first one, to deliver the services of traffic management, not only to the traffic information, but the traffic management themselves. Operating variable message sign, operating services to the road user travelers in the road. And so we have the whole information processing also, and we could have also the direct link. So this is what has been designed for, the exchange has been designed for this, having in mind this kind of data. But we are very focused on the traffic to management center to traffic management center itself in the past. And then it comes the NAP, it comes the traffic service providers, and all the use cases. Service provider can also give back data to the traffic management center to improve the monitoring and improve the traffic management itself. So, yeah, it's complex. It's a cycle. We have the ITS value chain. It's a cycle, and the information goes any direction. How we can now we have message queue. Message queue can be used in some of the scenarios, and we have some application. Let's do a few examples. We have CITS. We have delivery of DATEX2 information to the road central ITS station to roadside delivery. So we have RSU, we have a central ITS station, we deliver the data. We just deliver the data because we have the management in the center and want to deliver the data to the vehicles. There is also the other way around. The vehicles can deliver data back to the central to advise about alerts and messages of warning messages. So these are cases where they exchange, which may be DATEX2 content or CITS messages, which can be transformed each other in an equivalent way. We hope so. We really are under guaranteeing this kind of interoperability among the CITS world and the DATEX2 world, which is the definition of the road information through the messages. And here we were dealing about payload, D2 class, message, serialization of messages through, and this is really part of the business. The idea of messages led to encode in messages the content that are situation records or road sensor information or parking information, and so the messages in the way they are delivered to the final users. But the information is much more, as Joseph just told us. Information may be navigated by different aspects, different point of view. But specific services are done for specific messages. And we also can have the central ITS session who deliver to the mobile network through clouds directly to the vehicles. And these are another application. We have MQP brokers who deliver the. So I want to take some consideration among the two cases that we have in mind. SOAP push-pull feature today, message queue, message broker facilities. We have few exchange nodes. We control which are the nodes. We have clients, suppliers, we deliver services. We have service providers, service requester who interact and manages the road. Message queue brokers feature, you don't know the number of potential interconnected nodes or vehicles or many thousands of rare SU along the motorway network can be. So in this case, you don't bother about the single network, the single node who receives the information, but you have to grant the service, the message are reached, and you can ignore the single node. Sometimes yes, sometimes not. Let's see. In the other case, you cannot ignore that one node of exchange is failed because you don't grant the service as a whole. And here there is the big difference among the error control, handling, monitoring of the link, session management, bilateral mutual handshaking among the supplier and the client, the service requester and service receiver. From there, you have a fire and forget. I give you the information. Then the network will recover if there is any failure, and the multiplicity of the devices and will guarantee that the system is intrinsically robust. I give you some hints. It could be fail. It will challenge this observation in some cases. But you have the message can go, and it's a forget. It's a validity, the message itself in the CITS world. And so after it is expired, if it is not repeated, it will cease its existence. But the information maybe it's still alive. But in that kind of framework, in the CITS world, you don't need, and you can manage like that. You can have a cancellation message also. Someone uses, someone don't use. So expiry and validity time of the message, like was in TMC, like is in TPEG, they have a validity. When you broadcast, you just deliver information and you forget about you don't have the need to manage the update and cancellation. And we have the support to really have nodes together to exchange data and to agree on decision, operation, putting traffic management plan into operation. Here you have a challenge of number of messages exchanged to all the vehicle, all the RSU that are in the. So really they are the different scenarios, the different business cases which could be granted by different technologies. And so this is the world. We have different complex world with many scattered different elements, and we need to be in this world today. I wasn't not so focused in the need to use message queue for DATEX II, because it was center to center in the first diagram architecture. But if you put the complexity of the world or complexity of how to implement the services, and then cybersecurity. I don't put it here because we discussed just in our panel on the exchange. Cybersecurity is one of the challenges that we have. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabrizio. That is, it's a nice perspective of how you could look at this context, and it's very focused on the traffic management perception and use of DATEX. But I would the funny thing is that everything that has been presented up so far has nothing to do with the content. It is about the technology and the distribution architecture. So it's architectural choices and a modeling approach to support the more technical related features of the information exchange.
Jan presented list of publications which are in place or presented, so I would consider this to be the
But that's the technical part of the reflection of the development in the standards. If we go, can start my my slide. I knew what I did when I asked you. So I said, well, let's have a bit more view on the service dependency of the information elements that we have in our publications and how they interrelate. It's not on the monitor, but yeah, but there's well, anyway, let's take a user perspective. We are talking about vehicles, cars usually. And of course, this is also valid for if we talk about cyclists or maybe even pedestrians. And this is also valid for charging infra and so on. If we take this data provisioning is all done with an intent and there's an outcome. We want to achieve something because with the provision of data. And there are developments. We were used to having autonomous people driving their vehicle, but we are going via automated to autonomous vehicles. And this brings new and additional requirements. Now it's on the screen again. Great. Then everybody can stop rubbernecking. I like that word, rubbernecking. And this brings additional challenges, and we have to be aware, all of us, that if we want to support all these different use cases with one set of data, it's going to be a challenge. We have to be to make ourselves more conscious to that if we want to support this, this brings requirements with regard to the information you provide to have this kind of services of, operational. And if we take the traffic management perspective, it is about awareness in how the road is, where the road is, and how it, how you are allowed to use it or can use it. Can we drive by? What speed? Is my vehicle allowed here? Am I allowed here? Do I have to pay? Things like that. And that's not very easy every now and then. John showed us some pictures yesterday which were even more complicated. I think you have to go up in the air here because this is hard. But we have a lot of perspectives with regard to this data. If we're talking in the use case of traffic management centers that communicate with each other, they refer to locations on the street or on the road with marker pole positions or 200 meters after the exit 5. And there's a topological referencing used very often. Not very useful for the road user, but very useful for the one that exactly knows how the road is designed and so on. Then we take measures. And some are very well understandable for the human being. Use the hard shoulder if you want to go this direction. But if you have some automated vehicle or some automation levels, they don't understand that. So, and then maximum speed of 60, which is probably a temporary maximum speed, not the default speed at that location. But we also want to announce it in radio bulletins, in well, speech, but let's say text, human understandable texts. And we want to have the navigation adapting its advice to it. And in more complex situations, this was already the colleague of the traffic management operator addressed that one. But we also have a lot of new sources of data that use their own ontology and own logic, but it has to integrate because the end user doesn't understand the difference between what a traffic control center says and what a colleague on the road says when he pushed his Waze or Google Maps alert message. And if you have this high-end robot driving on the road, it has a different notion of the world, but it has also a different data requirement. Well, the CITS use case has been referred to very often already, and we all know this, but we all think that the other one can do the magic. That if I want to achieve something as a road operator, let's take the road operator point of view, or the charging point operator, or the parking operator, that the other one can work with the data that I provided. But that's not the case. Because if you are not servicing his information requirements for the service that he provides, then it won't work. We cannot expect magic, and we can expect a lot of intelligence, but magicians, even Jan, failed there. And that we have to be aware of that. So, but that brings also requirements to how we have developed DATEX. In DATEX, all this is possible, I would say. Maybe it's a too big a claim, but basically that could be the aim. But the fact that it is all possible is also the big risk, because we have this not complex but very complete data model, and we have profiles. And if we look at the delegated regulations, then it is about data categories that sum up types of things that happen on the road, but it doesn't mention anything about the services that are supposed to be supported. And that is our key challenge, and that's not our challenge, that's the challenge of the road operators and the service providers, that they become aware of each other's needs for the services that they want to deploy on the road. And as some of the things in the delegated regulations are mandatory in the RTTI from 2025 onwards, and in SFTI as well, we have to be we have to adapt to that changing world, and the tremendous growth of availability of data and findability of data makes this even harder. So you can all use DATEX to provide your SFTI data, but is it capable of serving the use case of the journalistic report on the radio, or is it capable of serving the autonomous vehicle driving? And that kind of considerations have to be made, and how do we represent the service capabilities of what is provided in a DATEX payload profile. And we did some exercise, and COVID brought us a lot of rest, but also stopped some of the thinking, because I found back these slides, they were from 2019, December. This discussion stopped after that, and we have to reignite it. And we have we have identified a lot of service types, and this was only a first draft, and it's far from complete, I think, especially if you look to the other publications that we serve in terms of energy publications and parking. But and that was also the conclusion yesterday, in the parking use case, there are a lot of use cases that bring requirements, different requirements with regard to, especially location referencing. And because if you have a map-aware service, it needs to be in the map. If you want a geo-aware service, it has to be in geospatial information. If it is a C road, it could a roadside station next to the parking. It could be. It has different requirements, and all this brings responsibilities in the data provisioning, the information, and how we make that available in DATEX or recognizable in the DATEX messages. How do we relate to the services that are supported? And then I won't start a discussion about who's deciding on the alignment of services across the European road network. For me, the question is, how do we do that in the DATEX data structures? And do we have to do that? And then we're talking about content. And we have heard a lot about technology and exchange logic and interchange logic and brokers and all very relevant. And I see that the paradigm, as Joseph explained, is changing, where we said, okay, everything I know, I will send it to you, and then you know everything as well. Is changing to everything I know is open for you to take out what you need. And that change well, I would say this is more managerial language, brings some requirements, but it doesn't change the information. It's about opening up, how you open up your data. And you see with all the data spaces and the new exchange or the new concepts of opening data towards each other in different ecosystems, you see the data stays more and more at the source and is consulted by the consumer and not asked for replication. So that paradigm change is a very important one. But then again, what are you offering? So that brings me to this was the last pitch. And we start with an open podium. So any one of you that I can present this mic wants to respond or reflect on things that have been said here. We solved all problems. Yeah, the thing is that we should do better than DATEX II. Jan.
Is it here? Oh, yeah. I know that in the audience are a few people who are in the category of newbies, and I want to tell them that there are two sorts of DATEX futures. One is the practical one for today implementations they will do at home. They should rely on existing solutions and pick up whatever is already on the table, and don't get scared by what you heard here, because this will happen a few years to or a year or two to even more. So just focus on what is done today and use it at your service. And this future we were presenting now is aiming a bit further on. So feel safe. That's all.
Yeah, that's a good warning. That's a good warning. you see that some of the concepts that we are discussing are already done. People take the DATEX content in a different exchange context, where we already have AMQP exchange of DATEX content. But it's not standardized. It is standardized with an agreement of some partners, but it is not on the formal level of DATEX, and not even on the SEN or ISO level. So it can be already, a lot of things can be done without having the official standards. But good point, especially with regard to the content. Take it home and start opening up your data.
I think the real minimum to focus on developing today is, as Josef once noted, you don't have to build up your database exactly following the class model we have in DATEX. You have to keep it compatible with that. Like, think of, are you able to transform these categories of vehicles you have detected in line with the DATEX class model? If you do this, you will stay updatable quite a lot. And I think the key takeaway, DATEX serves for a sort of ontological model or class model for how to describe the reality, and just focus on that categorization and these things, because these are results of long-term harmonization efforts, which has the value of being future-proof.
On another topic. Okay. Yes, another topic arose yesterday about the CITS word. CITS word has a different vision of the same information that we manage is in the road, but the experience is totally different. The vehicle is going along the road, finding something which should be warned, and some hints about direction to be taken, to navigation hints, and best suit the itinerary, and maybe ecological impact, and so on, sustainability, and so on. But in DATEX, this information is not tailored to the CITS services. CITS services, to be run, as they are not map aware, they need more information, traces information to be added, and this breaks also the way the DATEX II feed has been provided to the CITS breaks the semantic of DATEX II itself. So the profiling today for version 2.3, because version 2.3 was very strict about having one location for the situation, but we need more location. We need to provide many traces. And so the trick, the workaround I saw implemented in the DATEX II version 2 has been to provide multiple location for the for the situation record itself, which is not possible. One situation record is where it applies the situation record. The location is where the situation applies. And if you provide many locations, many traces, it's not true that that situation applies to all the traces. It applies only in the segment position of the event position. And then there are traces needed for warn different users, different drivers coming there. So I think we need a profile for CITS, not only for so we have to develop this. We never had this into mind. I didn't have myself, but we need really to tailor shape the information also for the vehicle point of view perspective. And yes, yesterday we presented also the dynamic lane management that was aiming to support the vision of the vehicle along the road, how it finds all the different signs, for instance, for a roadwork warning, speed limit, which are decreasing while I progress on the road, and you have a lane deviated and lane closed, and maybe to the opposite carriageway, one after each other. so with a number of different ITS messages that should be delivered to the vehicle in order to see one roadwork in DATEX 2 today, but it is a lot of number of messages that are dealing with the correct information to drive the vehicle through the path.
Yeah, that's also that's a challenge.
Thank you. I think it's very important to enhance the data model mythology, like Joseph said, to separate between entities and data types, to be able to use things like messaging. Because if you just apply messaging on the current model, it is not useful. You need to publish single entities, not a complete situation as one big data set. So you need to have the concept of entity within DATEX, and you need to have the concept of entity in the messaging itself. So you need to have a possibility to send that an entity does not exist anymore. So that's a real problem in messaging. You need to have a possibility to get the current state of the entities you are interested in. That depends if you use, let's say, AMQP, they have no concept of entity at all. If you use MQTT, they have a concept of entity, but it's really static. It's reflected in the topic structure. If you have Kafka, you have a built-in method of entities which is reflected in the protocol itself. You can send this entity is deleted, is not longer existing anymore. But in Kafka, you have no filtering possibility. Kafka is discouraged to use across different networks and so on. So there is not one messaging protocol which fulfills all our needs that we have. We have to build something on top or have restrictions and we have to deal with those restrictions. And I think the first step must be to enhance our data model to be able to be used by messaging. And this would be, the first step would be differentiate between entities and data types. And then we have to solve the next steps.
No?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's absolutely true. I limited the pitch to my part of the story, and that is to allow that. Yeah? Some people said that the current model isn't even that bad. When we did the analysis, we really created a toy model. Yeah? The university course student address. No? Address is the complex data type. It's not an entity, so that should disappear. And the interesting bit was when I started, I said, okay, I create a publication, university publication, with the classical mindset of a DATEX model, blah, blah, blah. Was done in about a minute, yeah? And I had a schema, and I could publish all universities with all courses, all students. The students were named incorrectly because Ian Cornwall appeared about 20 times in the XML if he was signed up to 20 courses. Yeah? So it was not, it should have been student subscription or something. Yeah? But the interesting thing was, I said, before I now start generating new association types and the new model, the V4 thing of the future, I started playing around, saying I could have modeled it using V3 in a different way. And I actually ended up with a different modeling in V3, with a model that had one schema. And what I did is I gave myself 3 API challenges. One was, if I have a student ID, I want all the courses he's subscribed to. Second was, if I have a course ID, I want all subscribed students. And the third was, give me a list of all courses and all students of each university. Yeah? So that were the 3 API functions, or the 3 APIs. And actually, I played around in V3, and I ended up with one schema generated by the current web tool, yeah, where I could create responses to all 3 API invocations. But it was a totally different model. It used V3, but it looked very strange. The tool worked with it. It created a schema, and you could create responses to all 3 API functions or calls or endpoints from that schema, but you had to have this kind of traversal strategy as well. So it is, as you said, number one, to open up the API, the methodology to support that better. I was wondering, in your diagram where you picked out the situation or situation records out of a publication and threw them via AMQP, how you managed the problem, that what did you do when the situation disappeared? Just interrupt here.
Yeah. They actually have just set the time to live. And so they live for a certain time. And then they are deprecated because they are not valid anymore anyway. Yeah.
So that's what Werner said. That is how so we have so many implications in our model about actually we have state shared between supplier and client, about which objects exist and things like that. We have information management in the exchange model to deal with that, to say this ID is no longer existing, but it's only in the exchange, and you can't use that easily for a message. Is it possible from we have to think about it. But so what is clear is, one thing is we have the model, and that's where the idea is presented. The second thing is we have to think about how we refactor all existing models. Yeah, it is no longer like 20 years ago, just we have the traffic engineers look on the model and think about, is that representing the road properly? We have to think about, how do you publish that information on various channels to various different services?
And we can continue this for hours, I fear. But there are other questions as well. You have a really short.
You hear me still?
No.
No. It doesn't work. Okay, I can just, you hear me, right? Okay. Now it works. Okay. I just wanted to add message queuing and exchange mechanisms is, of course, important topic, but do we solve this by going the API direction?
New question to be answered before June next year.
Yes.
But now we go back to the audience. I have a question here. He was already raising his hand for quite a while.
Thank you very much. Gottfried Almer, ASFINAG road operator. First of all, in the name of ASFINAG, I want to thank you for this conference. It was very good, and we had a lot of exchanges, some of which is summed up here. And just taking a minute to reflect on how far we've got up to this point, we have to say that actually it's working now. DATEX II is actually working now, and if we think back 1 or 2 years ago, we didn't think that you would have an AppCore project like this where the standardization is actually happening, and it's happening at quite a pace. So I just want to encourage all of the other stakeholders to simply use DATEX II now, as it is. We don't see any hindrance anymore. We've got CRTs running. It has DATEX II on the entry point. It works, and the enhancement possibilities work. I do think, from our view, we should tone down the absolute technical questions, which are nearly philosophical questions sometimes, and get the message out that it's actually working, and we should go on from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Gottfried. That's a good message to convey, and I agree. If I look at all the national implementations that we see nowadays using DATEX in combination with CITS as well, we saw it this morning. Another example. It works, and of course there is a better world ahead, but that was already the situation in 2020 and 2000 and in 1980 when we started with DATEX 1, but that was before I was born. I would like to ask Matthias whether you have some concluding remarks to the panel.
No, not. Well, to do the wrap up, that's probably up to you. But what Fabrizio said actually triggered some questions about this sort of coexistence of CITS and the DATEX world. And I wonder if we try to glue two things together that are different by nature. So, I mean, enlighten me, but I mean, my naive, non-technical perception of the situation is that in DATEX 2, you have incidents or road situations, whatever, but there is a consolidated view. It's at a single point, at least reported to be at a specific point. In real life, it may be 2 meters further, but anyway, so there is kind of a clear sort of sharp thing with attributes, and it's somewhere on the road, and it's reported as that, full stop. Yeah? Regardless of the data flowing forth and back and APIs and you name it. Yeah? If we talk about CITS, my perception is there are a lot of cars out there having a lot of different perceptions, maybe differing perceptions of something, some incident. So what in the end, when you look top down, is you get kind of a cloud of observations or a Gaussian distribution, yeah, depending on who is observing what from which angle. So it's this point concept in DATEX. It's here and it has these attributes, full stop, versus I see this, I see that. It may be the same thing. More statistical observations. So, and what you said is, I mean, how do we combine the two? It's sort of combining something very specific with something statistical. So I don't have a solution for that, but that's my naive observation. And I wonder if we try to glue it together, if it really sticks together, or if there is something needed in between to make the two worlds communicate and coexist.
Yes, I can reply. Yesterday we showed that there are different visions, the same reality has different point of observation, and there could be also have different goals. The goal of the traffic management is what you perceive now as reality is that there are roadworks there, and they manage the roadworks, and they put the sign to manage the roadworks. But the experience of the vehicle coming from one direction or from another direction could be very different. And then the traveler experience, I have to go there. Which is the best itinerary? But I am a tourist, I want to visit Siena, I want to see, I can do a day tour and make a long path, but I can do to a good restaurant to grab some wine, or I need to deliver goods and I need to, okay, I will do some queue in the roadworks and then I will come at the end earlier. This is a challenge, yes, because the same reality is different observation point and different objective, different goals for the different users. And I wanted also to add one thing that we mentioned a bit shorter about location. These kind of services require more and more precise location. And once I said, there is a road queue in an exit slip road at the toll station or the junction, it's enough. For journalistic information, it's enough. For VMS information, it's enough. But if I have to go to the car who is driving into that slip road, I have to warn, where is the queue? Where it starts? It starts at the beginning, it started along the road, or it's just in the tolling gate to the queues? And it's not at all trivial. And we need really to add accurate information position on the event. In the location that we have now in version 3, we added a lot of information for satellites, information about the quality of their position. It's not enough. We really need to extend the location point of view related to maps when available, related to the GPS that I receive from many vehicles. So which is the truth? The truth is the experience from many vehicles, more or less, I can find the average or associated main position.
Location is very tricky, especially related to a lot of other things. And I love this. But we're out of time. Yeah.
Let me
Joseph.
allow a quick response, because
Yeah.
Matthias said something that is very, very important, and that is the thing in between. And this is the risk, and that I think is the conclusion of this discussion. We should avoid to run into risk that we try to put the functionality always into the standards. That doesn't work. Sometimes you have to have this piece of in between, and what we need is the cooperation of the standards people. This is what we did with the TISA DATEX SRTI table. Yeah, that was the guideline in that case for the people who built the tool to translate SRTI from DATEX to depict. Yeah. Yeah, or the other way back. And we have, and we cannot always avoid it. That is a problem. It is different worlds, and maybe sometimes we try to glue them together simply because it's politically posh to do so. But in some places, this is actually needed. We have another example which was not so prominent during the last 2 days than the CITS, and that is what's happening in the DFRS ecosystem. This is also individual vehicle data, just received by a different channel communication mechanism. But there you now have the challenge that you have an abundance of new information from vehicles, and you want to do your SRTI DATEX-based service, even the journalistic ones, but this information allows you to improve your SRTI message sets. In particular, a lot of problems are reported much earlier than today with the conventional mechanisms. So you want to do a translation from this world, which is Stensoris, yet another standard, totally different world, into DATEX II. And that is what the DFRS guys are doing at the moment. Yeah, they're trying to create, to find out how to best take these individual vehicle reports and transform them into, let's say, elements. And these elements could be situation records then when you convey them to the national access point. So you have to do the transformation, but it doesn't have to change the standards. Sometimes it's good enough if you have a specification on how the mapping is to be done. Yeah, and maybe you do some minor adaptations like we did after the table exercise. We said, oh, there is maybe something missing in our enumeration here. Yeah, the TPEC guys have 2 more literates, so we added them in the next possible version. But that is a cooperation that is needed. Yeah, and it is not doesn't always mean a big change in the standards. It just means make the standards people aware of each other along the value chain.
And I would like to add, in combination with the services that we have in mind, because adding elements is not the challenge. Using them in the right context is what is required. I still remember when, Andre is here, when Portugal entered the DATEX II community, they started using DATEX in a way that we said, yeah, but that was not intended. How can you do that? Yeah, but where is it that it is not supposed to be used in this way? And that was no, it was nowhere, and that was back in 1625 or something like that. But we just crept out of our dinosaur eggs, and then these youngsters came in. But and that is still the challenge. We stop the panel now, Jan, because it is 12 o'clock. And we should stop at 12, and it is not because I don't want to continue, but at 12:15, we are gonna join online the closing ceremony of the NAPCOR the NAPCOR Digital Data Day event, like we joined the opening. I really appreciated these 1.5 days or 2 days, because it started with a magnificent dinner in a splendid location. And I'm really looking forward to already the follow-up of this. What we will do, just to give you a small look into the near future, next year we will have several webinars going into specific subjects that is more targeted to specific audiences, because it is not relevant for everything, is not relevant for everyone. We will have, based on the evaluation of this user forum, we will have a user forum next year, most likely in a digital format. And in 2 years' time, we will convene again in a wider setting, in a larger setup, somewhere in Europe. And meanwhile, I wish you a very enjoyable time in Paris. Some of you stay here for the weekend, I guess. Thanks for participating and joining in the meetings. And I wish you a safe trip home. Thanks a lot.